Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Todd and Shane's Cloudy Podcast, number 398, recorded live Wednesday morning, August 1st, 2018. Before we go any further, we have to talk about our lovely sponsors, and I think we might be bringing another sponsor on here in a couple of weeks. It sounds like that's coming around, so we're very excited about that. We love our sponsors. Of course, our first sponsor and good friends of mine and some folks I do some work for on the side, SysKit. They are our first sponsor. A couple things I wanted to mention. Shane always yells at me because I tend to drone on about them, and I will admit that does happen from time to time. But a couple of weeks ago, I did publish a review of SP.kit. And that is out on my blog. You can go to toddclint.com/ I should have had this in my notes, SP.kit review, and read about that. And it talks about some of my favorite pieces of that. And I would be remiss if I also didn't mention that they released a product here a couple of weeks ago called, SysKit Security Manager is not new. But inside SysKit Security Manager is an automatic discovery of site collections. So anybody who is managing a SharePoint environment on-prem, in the cloud, in a shoebox, whatever, they always have trouble keeping track of site collections. And so this is one tool that will do that. So check out SysKit Security Manager. You can go to syskit.com. They got a free trial. They're great folks. Tell them I sent you. Apparently an alarm going off or something. But that is our sponsors for this episode. All right, Shane.
I mean, where should I start the lectures? So I've missed you. You know what? I'm going to be positive. I'm going to be nice. Todd, I've missed you. I've not talked to you for more than like 30 seconds in like a month.
It has been insane. It has been the craziest summer ever. Yeah, we've been like two ships in the night. When I'm home, Shane's not. When Shane's home, I'm not. And then like last week, neither one of us were. It's been crazy. We've been all over. We've been on customer sites. We've been doing family stuff. It has been insane.
I know, and it doesn't sound like it's getting any better, right? So we're going to be able to get together next week, and then we're going to get right back into not seeing each other?
Yeah, I was talking to a potential customer this morning, doing some scoping, and they said, "Oh, that's great. When will you be able to do this?" And I'm like, "Middle of September's looking really good. Like the third week of September." It is, it's been pretty insane.
Yeah. And is that some SharePoint-y stuff? Is that
Office 365 stuff?
Okay.
Yeah, it's scoping some things out, and I've been doing a lot more of the Office 365 thing. Still doing a bunch of the on-prem stuff, and it sounds like this week you and I kind of switched roles. You were doing some more on-prem stuff. I was doing more Office 365 things, but doing a bunch of both.
Yeah. It's just interesting, right? Yeah. And so, this past week, right, that's where I was. You guys don't want to hear me whine, but basically I worked 40 hours over the course of 3 days, which were Saturday, Sunday, Monday, doing a customer migration, which was child abuse for me. I was very whiny about it. But it was pure. It was SharePoint on-prem 2010 to 2016. And really, it went really well, other than there was two problems. So one, we built the test farm back in February. Mm-hmm. And so with 6 months of testing, they pretty much didn't do any testing whatsoever. So that was precious. Because that would be, it'd open up a ticket like, "Hey, this thing doesn't work because of your migration." We'd be like, "Does it work in dev?" And they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I tried it." We'd go over to dev and it didn't work in dev. I'm like, "No, you didn't. You're a liar." I just started calling people liars to their face. I don't know what to tell you. You're lying. But it was interesting that really the only major hiccup we had was they're using some third-party software whose name will remain nameless for the moment.
Yep, don't besmirch them. Yes.
And those guys just I don't know. I don't know if we're the first customer ever to go to SharePoint 2016 on their platform or what, but their stuff doesn't work. Right now they've got a group of devs writing a new piece of functionality, furiously just hammering on the keyboard, writing a new wrapper to do some stuff that just, once again, kind of the people who never tested, I feel like we're the first people to ever do this because it's not a special scenario. Their product's like, "Hey, we can't find the 32-bit version of SharePoint." I'm like, "Well, that's good because there's not a 32-bit version of SharePoint."
Because there ain't one. Well, and that's funny. So one thing I want to mention is part of the reason that upgrade went so well is I'm sure that the SharePoint 2010 environment that you were migrating from was just rock solid. I mean installed and configured in a way that just is it sounds like it may have been the perfect SharePoint 2010 farm. I don't know. I mean, to hear you go on and on about it, that's the only thing that I can take from that. So I think that was part of your success.
It might have been. We talked about you a lot, and they wanted me to make sure that you knew that my weekend was good. I wasn't stressed out. They fed me well. That it went as I was the happiest consultant on the planet. Unlike someone else who, when they upgraded them to 2010, seemed to be really grumpy the whole time.
No comment on that. But the other thing is, you and I, when we do the migration talk, one of the things we talk about is third-party products, and the less of those that you have, the better your upgrade goes. And these kind of conversations are why we say that.
Yeah. Well, the other big challenge for them that I kept reminding them is their goal for next year is to go from 2016 to SharePoint Online, which I'm like, that's good. That's what your goal should be. So I'm like, the more of this pain we can take now, ripping out some of this garbage, the less customizations we can do. Right, these are all going to make our lives easier next year as well. So they were getting the message. We couldn't go whole hog out of the box 2016, but we got pretty close.
Yeah. And so since you went from 2010 to 2016, you used a third-party tool then, I assume?
No, we did database attach.
To the 2013 in the middle?
Yes. They had bought a third-party tool, and I was like, the way you guys want to do, I was like, we can do this with databases. They're like, sure. So we spun it up, back in February when we tested, and we got it all. The database attach went really smooth for them. So
excellent. Again, just really commentary on how awesome their 2010 farm was. I think is really the only thing.
I think it is. Yeah, and I ended the day yesterday with them. They had some InfoPath forms, and InfoPath is the devil. I think we all can agree with that.
Yeah.
But so part of the transition was we were going from HTTP SharePoint.company.com to HTTPS.SharePoint.company.com. InfoPath wasn't a fan.
No.
So I wrote them some steps on how to open up, download the XSN, make it a cab, extract the cab, manually modify some XML files, use make cab to make a cab, turn it back to an XSN, import. Oh, they just looked at me like, can you say that again slower?
Yep.
Like,
did you do the IIS redirect thing to bounce HTTP to HTTPS?
Yes.
And InfoPath still wouldn't behave, huh?
I don't think so. Yeah, it was not. InfoPath was not happy with us.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and they had. We also switched SSL certs, and there's a bunch more. TLS 1.0. They're trying to get that out of the equation. There was a lot of insignificant sounding, very technically challenging curveballs.
Yeah, and I again, I'm familiar with that environment, and they took a lot of advantage of parts of the product that I can see. They weren't doing anything wrong, but I can definitely see the complexity.
Yeah. So, but no, they're in a good place now. So I'm pretty happy for them.
Excellent.
I don't even remember why I started telling the story, but yeah, it was.
We're just catching up, letting everybody know where we've been. So I have been working on a gig for a company, moving them from file shares to Office 365.
Oh, like OneDrive for Business or OneDrive or just
all of the above. So they have hundreds of terabytes of content in file shares.
Cool.
Now, I'm not sure if all of that is valuable data. That's part of what their the project is they've got file shares, again, hundreds of terabytes of data in file shares, and it is redundant in a lot of ways. So they know that of that corpus, there's a bunch that's just copies of stuff that they don't need. But the other thing is they recognize that this has been out there for a long time, and there's just no structure. There's no ability to do retention and all those kind of things, and they have decided that they're going to swallow that bitter pill and figure out what to do with those file shares and bring them into the early 2000s and put them in a place where you can classify them and index them and make some sense of them. And it has been it's a great project. I mean, it's all kinds of fun stuff, and it's all these little pieces that you and I talk about and that we do during the and it's just been a good time. So they have no Office 365 footprint, so it is just a green field, and you're just able to do the things that are the right thing to do as of today, which a month from now and 2 months from now something new will come out, and
yeah,
somebody will look back at the things that I've done and wonder who the idiot was. But lots of fun little challenges.
Oh, good. That's, I mean, it's always nice to see, right? Because you know that their lives will be better when you're done with this project, right? You're not just kind of shuffling paper. You're going to make things better when it's all said and done. It might be ugly. It might take a little bit of fighting to get there, but at the end of the day, they'll be better off for it, which is always a nice little feeling.
Yeah, and I was talking to one of the business folks because they're file shares. Again, it's an established company. They've been around for a long time, and it's just, you can imagine the proliferation of stuff. And I was trying to build some of the business cases for the pieces, and search was one of them, and some of the things we can do with search. And I said, it'll be great, when people come on, they'll be able to go here, they'll be able to search, we can do scopes, we can do all this kind of stuff. And I said, how do they find content now? Like, well, they just know where it is. I'm like, well, like when a new person comes on, how do they know? And it's like that scene in A Few Good Men where where Noah Wiley's on the bench, not the bench, but and they're like, how do you got the book with all the rules, and he's like, well, how do you know where to go to eat? Well, you just got to follow the guys. That's the only way these people know where these things are at, is they have to follow somebody else who's been there, and there's just no way to find anything, no structure. Oh man.
Did you tell them there's this new concept called information architecture and library science, Dewey Decimal System?
I have brought some of that up, and it's funny because they know that that's the way they want to go, but it just seems so overwhelming, and the change seems so. I mean, they're really, and it's refreshing though frustrating that a lot of people in the chain. So working with Office 365 for the last few months, I have been doing less work with IT nerds like us, and more work with non-IT nerds.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the very significant differences is they have much more focus on the user experience. And so, you and I geek out about all the cool things that SharePoint will do and Office 365 will do, and they don't care about all that. In their head, the most, important things with user experiences like. So we're bringing up how these people work in file shares and how they're going to work in Office 365, there's a bunch of people whose brains are just exploding. They're like, this is going to be so tough on the user. I'm like, yes, it is. From now until Christmas, yes, they will hate it. But once they start figuring it out, it's going to be so great. They're going to love it so much.
Yeah, when I wrote about that, so I was going to go somewhere else with it. I had like multiple tangents off that comment, but the one I was going to go with here. So one of the things I'm going to think is very interesting. So we know that SharePoint 29 released. I think you talked about that last week or 2 weeks ago.
No, haven't done a podcast since SharePoint 2019 came out.
All right, well, so SharePoint 29 came out. We'll probably talk about that at some point. Oh, it's bullet B. I see it. But one of the things about SharePoint 29, that they're touting is, hey, a lot of that modern experience that is in SharePoint Online is now going to, make its way to on-prem, which is like, oh, yay, modern. But one of the things that I think a lot of us people that have been doing SharePoint for more than, a few years, we find the modern experience challenging, right? Because it's different. They've moved our cheese.
Yeah.
And it's better if you're net new.
It's better
blank
cheese.
slate. It's better. But if you've been doing the same thing in SharePoint for the last 10 or 15 years, it's really jarring when you get in there in this modern experience. So I'm worried now, without a lot of thought, but my first reaction is, how are people on-prem going to, feel about this when you migrate them from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2019, and all of a sudden, interacting with a document library, which they've done for 15 years, is a completely different experience. I'm kind of worried that bringing the modern UI to on-prem might be a negative. React.
Yeah. I mean, on the surface, I agree with you, but it kind of conversations I was having with these folks coming from file shares to SharePoint Online, it's going to be different, but they're going to figure it out. And I guess the other thing is, like, stuff always changes. So there's magnitude of change, and I get that. But it's going to have to happen. And I will tell you, as a guy that's been doing on-prem SharePoint for close to more than 15 years now, I feel the same thing. I mean, like, when I'm setting things up and I'm interacting with SharePoint, you and I have talked about this before. We are terrible users. We have like 3 things we know how to do, and we've been doing the same 3 things for 15 years. And now with this new cheese, it might be better cheese, but I don't like it. Like, it's taken me some time to get things figured out. So I'm feeling it too. I'm sympathetic to it. But it's the way it's got to be. So the best we can do is have good training and, be sympathetic and empathetic and help them out.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it definitely is. It's got to happen, right? Because at some point they're going to transition, but it'll just be interesting because, it's one thing when you have to suffer, or not suffer, when you get to experience that transition when you move to the cloud, but when you're on-prem, all of a sudden becomes like the cloud that is awkward and weird. I don't know. It'll be fun.
Yeah, but I'm enjoying it. This project, that I'm working on now is not exactly in my wheelhouse, but that's never stopped me.
Yeah.
Do you know how to do this, and this? Absolutely. But it's been good. I've liked it. There's no on-prem SharePoint to speak of, and it's been very, very good. So, and I recognize that's the way things are going. So,
yeah. The other interesting thing you talked about, because it's been a drastic change for me over the last 6 months too, is almost all of my customers now are the business. They are not IT anymore. This morning, so I had 2 calls this morning. One was with a Swedish gentleman who works out of an office in Japan for a very international company, and he was trying to drive the business He wants a Power App, to do expense reporting all over the globe, which sounded easy, and then the more we talked, I realized was really, really complicated. But anyway, so that was fun, right? Business guy, and then the guy after him was I think he was a Dane. And so he works and owns a company in the UK, and he's the business owner, right? I mean, he's the owner of this giant commercial construction company, but he's like, hey, I'm the one that understands what this business processes needs to be. So, he's the one engaging with us. It's not some IT person. It's just fascinating, especially in the Power Apps, Flow, Power BI space. The customers are all business drivers, not IT. And in most cases, if IT is in the conversation, it's because IT is being a blocker about something. And so you IT folks that are listening, quit being blockers for Power Apps and Flow and be enablers.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. A lot of my customers are the business folks, and yeah, and for me, it has forced me to again think more about what the business experience is. Not so much, I click next and finish a bunch, and ta-da, you've got SharePoint. It does this, and this. Go. And they're like, well, how do I find my thing? This is dumb. So it has been very refreshing. And I think for I have one customer that has really hit that hard. She is a very technical person, but not in IT. And she was one where I really noticed that, because most of the questions that I've been answering for her and helping her get set up have nothing to do with technology and have everything to do with how is this going to look for the user? Where is the user going to find this? How are they going to know where to find this? And it has been very eye-opening about how all that goes.
Yeah. Well, and because we haven't talked about anything. So Inspire was, it's probably been 3 or 4 weeks ago now. But so that is Microsoft's big partner conference, right? So they have 40,000 people, I think, that show up to that to hear about, kind of the partner ecosystem, because it's a very vibrant system.
Yeah.
But so Satya was the keynote, which is always awesome.
Yeah.
And so one of the people he brought on stage with him to talk to, though, was Samit. Sorry, I said his name wrong. Samit. And so Samit is he was a security physical, so like a TSA type of guy, but over at Heathrow. And so, just a normal guy, not a lot of formal schooling, just doing his thing. But one of the things, they had a lot of challenges, processing lots of passengers. As you can imagine, Heathrow sees a lot of different languages over the course of, every minute.
Yep, I've experienced that, yep.
Yeah, so he found out about this Power Apps thing on his own, and so he sat down and wrote a Power Apps, right? This is once again, a TSA agent, basically. He sat down and wrote a Power App on his own to help all his fellow workers with translation. So it had like the common, 30 things that these guys would have to like say to international people, but just a little app interface for kind of working back and forth that. They used to carry around a big 3-ring binder, and that would be kind of how they like show pictures to people who didn't speak an English or a language they could come to commonality on. So this dude just wrote an app, and he showed it to some people. Like all his coworkers loved it, so they started using it. The bosses saw it and they're like, how'd you do that? Like they didn't believe him. Like they're like, did you pay somebody like 50,000? Or, we had a quote for 250,000 from a software shop to build this, Like, no, I just built it on nights and weekends or days and weekends. Cause I think he was even working the night shift. And so fast forward a few months and this guy is now on stage at a conference with Satya Nadella, talking about what he's built. He's built 20 different power apps. So Heathrow is now like, I don't want to say completely ran, but a large part of the operational things that happen at Heathrow are now done on power apps that this guy and a team of people that he is training have done. I mean, he just took his career to like this whole new place that could never even have fathomed because he embraced some new technology and because he knew the business process, right? He was the business guy. And so while I was at Inspire, I got to meet him, which was it was this weird experience, right? Because he was, I was like super geeked out to meet him. I've been talking about him forever because I've known this story for a long time. So I was like, I want to meet this dude. I want to go shake his hand and, just tell him how proud I am, excited I am. Turns out he was bugging the people there. He wanted to meet me because a lot of what he had done had came out of my videos.
Awesome.
And so like every month at Heathrow, there's a meeting where the Power Apps Power Group sits down and watches Shane Young's latest videos and talks about the new concepts. I'm like, I'm not okay with this. But it was just a surreal moment.
So now all those people that are groping you at security know who you are, and it's very good.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, I don't want to oversell, but I almost got like teary-eyed realizing that like this dude's life is profoundly different because he discovered Power Apps and has done this thing, right? He'd never been to America. Now he's been to Vegas with, staying on stage with someone I'll never get to meet. He got to go to Seattle. I mean, he's getting to do like this world tour to talk about this stuff and he's making lives, I don't know. And then what's even crazier is I met like 5 other guys. So I met Keith. So Keith is, oh goodness, I'm not going to get his nationality right. But so Keith is another guy, same type of story, right? He got to do this. I think he was a dispatcher and he wrote an app and all of a sudden he's changed his company in the world. And there was just this large group of these people that were not IT, but because they understood how the business needed it and the business used it, they were, I'm inspired again. Oh, I'm flustered. You talk.
Well, and that's the goal. Guys like you and I know the technology well, but we can't leverage it for the best possible value because we don't know the processes as well. So that's always been the challenge that you and I have had to do is to sit down and take our knowledge of the technology and sit with the business and say, here's the ways we can wedge this in and make this work. And now the technology has gotten easy enough that the people that know the business part can just do it. So that's good. Yeah.
It is. It's just inspiring, and it's just a reminder once again, right? You and I have been talking to our listeners now for probably a year, right? You've got to start to reach out there and embrace and adapt. Adapt's the wrong word, but grow with how this kind of ecosystem is changing. If you're like, nope, I only work with IT, you're going to find yourself without able to get a consulting gig soon. I mean, you've got to go meet this thing where it's at.
Yep. So should we start on number A?
No, this is no fun. All right. So I don't know, and this is back to, once again, you and I haven't talked in a month. I don't know if you've seen this patch. So there was a .NET security update that got rolled out in July, and it has been wreaking havoc quietly, right? Because it's not a SharePoint patch, and I don't think Microsoft has even put the whole story together yet. But this patch is, so I had a customer who was still running SharePoint 2007. Don't judge. And her farm just wouldn't run. Plain, simple. We couldn't get it to do nothing. Ripped out this patch. We reconfigured SharePoint. Everything was great. I've had a couple of people do fresh installs of SharePoint 2016. They couldn't get anything to work, and I'm mostly certain this patch is what it is. So if you guys are seeing weird security or .NET errors, you can't keep app pools running, you can't, the token service seems to freak out in 2016. There was some patches, some .NET security updates that rolled out in July that are causing havoc, and I just don't think we have our arms wrapped around how or exactly all the things that it's affecting.
Yeah, so I had this problem, and I thought I talked about it on here.
Oh, well, good.
But I can't find it. So I
Okay.
don't think I did. But yeah, absolutely had this exact same problem with the new farm that I put up.
Yeah, one of our men or not, what do you call the heathens?
Hooligans.
The hooligans. I almost called them my minions. You people in the chat room. So one of them
You
works
people.
for
Yeah, me too.
a very large bank, and yeah, it took down like just swaths of their SharePoint environment, and they've been on with Microsoft, day and night trying to work it out, and they got the farms back up, but I still just know that if you're anything's weird in SharePoint right now or any of your .NET stuff, go look at this KB that Todd posted as part of the show, and just say, could this possibly be it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't remember. Yes. Oh, I remember what it was now. I had a customer that they had burned this into their Windows images, and so because you got to stay on top of these security patches.
Right?
I'm sympathetic of that, but yeah, it happened in the middle of me installing some machines for the farm, and I can't remember if it happened in the middle of one farm install or between two farm installs. Yeah. And I'm like, what? This worked like a day ago. What's going on? What did you people do to your image? You guys are doing something to your image. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I just opened up the KB, and so they've added like 5 more workarounds. So clearly Microsoft's starting to figure out that this is doing bad things. But so far, the only workaround that's worked for my SharePoint customers has been to uninstall the patch and then rerun the farm configuration wizard.
Yeah, and for those of you that are listening on the audio only, number one, you can't tell that Shane and I are wearing matching adorable baby blue shirts.
Oh,
But the KB is KB4345913. And as always, any of the things that we talk about, we have links for. You can go to toddclint.com and get the show notes for every podcast. This one is 398. Or you can go to toddclint.com/podcast398, whatever the number is, and get all the links there. So I had somebody I was talking to that was a listener, been a listener for a long time, and they were like, oh, you were talking about this thing, and I don't know how to get to it, and I really want to read up on it. And I'm like, I do the show notes on it. But they were a podcast only listener, did not go to my blog, and they're like, what? You've got a blog? I'm like,
drink.
let me tell you a little bit about my blog. So yeah, all those links for everything you ever hear, they're out there.
Yeah, and then there's the last thing on this because I keep rereading it, right? The problem you're having with SharePoint is not listed in here, right? So don't go read this and be like, well, my error message isn't here.
That's not me.
Telling you this patch is the devil.
Just humor me, uninstall it all, reboot. Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently Windows 2016 is not affected like the same way that the younger OSs are, or older, the earlier. Gosh, it's like I've worked like 60 hours this week, and it's Wednesday morning. My brain's gone.
Hard.
It is. I talked to all these international people. They're like, my English isn't very good. I'm like, your English is better than mine. Shut up.
That is true. That's absolutely true. So another thing that has come out again, this was like 2 weeks ago, the SharePoint 2019 public preview is out, and there's just stuff all over. Because of travel and because of customer things and sleep and eating, I have not really been able to blog a bunch of stuff or hit this as hard as I'd like to, but I'm hoping here in the next couple things. The other thing is I had to get a new server. My virtualization server here at home was full. I just had no space to install it.
Oh,
I got a new machine set up. So hoping to do that sometime soon. But Microsoft back in May said that SharePoint 2019 was coming, that they were going to do a preview this year. They have made good on that promise. And so it is out there. Shane and I have talked a little bit about this. I think for the new version of SharePoint for 2019, depending on which way you came to this podcast, I think if you're an IT nerd, you're not going to see a lot of big changes. So most of your next finish moves will translate from 2016 to 2019. But like Shane said, a lot of the end user things, the modern-y things, is really where they're going to focus on this. So be ready to be befuddled by that.
yeah. It's I mean, I'll just be like you, right? I haven't touched it. I haven't downloaded it. And honestly, looking at my schedule, I don't know when I'm going to get to that. But don't tell anyone that. That'll be a secret.
Mm-hmm. And because it's the thing that I do, I already have the page up for the patches. I haven't got it populated yet because I need to figure out how I'm going to do that. I'm kind of taking some feedback on how I've done the previous ones. But you can go to toddclint.com/SP2019 builds and go ahead and bookmark that. And then I have the Twitter account for that you can go to that will be tweeting those things out as well. So if you need to keep up to speed on those, I will be maintaining that long, glorious tradition.
Well, so speaking of that tradition, did you talk about the Office Online Server stuff a couple weeks ago?
I don't know if I did or not, but we can certainly hit that quickly here. That's a good piece of advice.
Yeah. So one of the things with Office Online Server that was news to me, which is probably embarrassing to say, but so Office Online Server, right? We all know that when you patch it, really you're uninstalling and reinstalling, right? That's always kind of been you kind of rip the farm down, you patch it, then you put the farm back in. Yeah. It's not a big deal. It's not nearly as bad as it sounds, but it's a different process than we're used to with patching. So I went to patch it for the customer we were doing the migration for, and the patch wouldn't take. Right? I'm like, what? It kept saying the version's not right for this patch. And I'm like, what do you mean? This is not rocket science, right? I'm not that smart, but I'm smart enough to next finish my way through a patch. Mm-hmm. And so it turns out I got a little help from Trevor to remind me that you have to remember that the version, the base of OOS keeps revving. So they do monthly CUs just like SharePoint, but occasionally, let's say every 6 to 9 months, and that's off the top of my head, so that number might be a lie. Yeah. They roll out a new rev of the version. And so you have to install that new major version in order to keep patching. So we had the 2016 base version, then we've been CUing it, which had been great until we got to a CU that was post the new major version, which came out in October or November of 17.
Yeah, September, October, something like that. Yeah.
Somewhere in September, somewhere in late 2017. So we had to uninstall everything, put the September 2017 base down, and then we could pick back up on the CUing. So that was complete news to me. I don't know. So I just want to make sure you guys kind of had that in the back of your head if you're responsible for OOS in your life.
Yeah, two things about that. Number one, I have not done a good job keeping that up on the patch site. So I need to. The problem is I don't patch OOS every month, and so I'm not exactly sure where those thresholds are at, but I need to call those out so that people that have your problem can go to my page and see that and see so that was the other thing that reminded me of so you at the beginning of that you briefly mentioned the patching process for OOS and how it basically just strips everything out, flushes IIS, and then reinstalls. It reminds me of a story at a SharePoint conference when I was talking, and I said, with SharePoint 2013, you can't install the OWAs and SharePoint on the same box. And some guy, and I'm like, no, you can't do it. And I'm like, yes, sir. He's like, oh, you can do this thing with the register key, and you can do this thing, and I've got SharePoint and OOS installed. Well, you don't lie to these kind people. You could do it. Well, sir, have you patched OOS yet? Because when you do, it will destroy SharePoint. DED dead. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those classic examples, right? We've had probably a dozen of those over the years where someone was just hell bent in one of our sessions. He was smarter than us, and he wanted to tell us while we had the microphone.
Yep.
He tried, and then he left with his tail tucked between his legs.
And he might be smarter than us, but that one particular thing, yeah, that was funny though.
Right.
Yes. So I need to call that up better on my page.
Right, it's just a public service announcement. Don't heckle the person with the microphone. It just never works out.
They have more experience than you. So two things about that. So normally it's comedians, but in our case it was not. The person on stage has more experience ad-libbing and improvising than you probably do, so they're going to react more quickly. Number two, in most cases, the crowd is going to be on their side, not on your side. They have already won the room over, and you have not, so it's just not going to work very well for you.
All right, so...
one thing I wanted to mention is...
Yes?
So SharePoint 2019 came out, and everybody wants to install it and do the thing with the thing. And I wanted to bring up that there was a paper published a while back, a couple years ago, I guess just last year, on how to set up a SharePoint 2016 dev environment in Azure. And I wanted to remind people about that because that whole process will work with SharePoint 2019 as well. So if you are a rabid SharePoint lover, and who wouldn't be, and you want to get SharePoint 2019 out, but you don't know where to do it, you can do this if you got some Azure space.
And so I would just add on to that there's a much better YouTube video that will walk you step by step on how to build your SharePoint environment in Azure if you want to do that type of testing.
Sounds dumb. So anyway, there's this white paper if you want to go out and do it. If Lori or Shane or somebody puts the link to that video, I may put it in the show notes. But yeah, the underlying bits of SharePoint 2016 and 2019 are similar enough that most of that stuff will just work. So get it out there and play.
And I like when Todd does things like that in platforms where I can't cuss him out for it. It's very rude, right? He does that type of stuff on stage, right? All I can do is throw shoes at him. So can't even throw a shoe at you here.
And for those of you, that is not a euphemism. Shane has absolutely thrown a shoe and hit me while we were on stage being paid. Yes.
I don't know why we don't get invited back more.
It is interesting, yeah. And so in the chat room, there's some talking about this, about 2019. Is the mineral and all that stuff similar to 2016? Yes. The install scripts and all that all seem to work. That's all, yes. I mean, there's little bits and bobs here and there. The prereqs are a little differently, things like that. But for the most part, it's the same.
Yeah. And Kyle says, he uses the same exact scripts and it just plowed right through. So that's great news to hear. I'll take my 2016 video and I'll just rebrand it 2019 and just put in a little voice notes 2019. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
All right. What else? What's your E? I don't even know what that is.
I don't know either.
Right.
Oh, so that was just the thing. I was working with another customer, and they wanted to make some flyouts and again some more user stuff, some UI thing. And they found this blog post from 5 years ago about how to drop some JavaScript on SharePoint 2010 or 2013 to make a list flyout, and they wanted to remove the column name. And it was just this really weird, crazy, specific thing. And she found the solution. And the blog post, I just wanted to give the guy a shout out. His blog post says 2010, 2013. I just wanted to shout this out and say it also works for 2016.
Gotcha.
But it was exactly the thing. And the reason I bring this up is because everybody should blog. Everybody has that one little tidbit that guy had. That guy's got a big blog. It's not, but that just one little nugget that you figure out. And so I was talking to this other person, and I told her that she should absolutely have a blog. She should do it. She's uncovering a lot of these little things. And somebody who wants to do the same thing that she's trying to do, because the description's a little different, if she blogged this and said, hey, I did this thing, and here's how it looks, and thanks to this guy, she would be helping somebody else out. And so that goes for everybody in the audience too.
I agree. And speaking of that, I don't know. I don't know her personally, right? But there's a SharePoint MVP, Tracy Vanderscheif.
Yep.
So that crazy woman, she decided that she was going to do a blog post today. All right, that's commendable, right? You're thinking, all right, Monday through Friday, not holidays. No, a blog post a day. And she did it for 2 straight years. She did 730 straight blog posts on the Office 365, online, Microsoft, that whole ecosystem. And I can't even fathom it. Like it just blows my mind in such a way that I want to mention it, but I can't even tell you how awesome I think it is because I just can't even imagine doing it. I don't know.
Yeah, and so yeah, the amount of work that Tracy went through, yeah, is mind-boggling. Like I can't, like she may have put more effort into those blog posts than I've put into my entire career. I mean, it's just, as somebody who's blogged, that's overwhelming. But then think about all of the help that she has, I mean, just the impact that she has had, and that's insane. Sandy in the chat room saying she was riding on a train with Tracy once and Tracy was blogging on her phone so that she wouldn't miss one. That's...
I mean, right, because guys, I mean, and I was reading about Tracy's work while I was sitting there. So I write those articles for Petri.com, right? And so I'm trying to write those, and I had to do 2 of them after working 13 hours. I was a whiny little girl about it. But
oh, I know.
But just sitting there thinking about all the effort it took me to write those 2 articles and thinking that she does that every single day on purpose, I don't know.
Yep. I can't remember. So I'm a big fan of Dax Shepard's podcast, and he does a lot of writing for movies and stuff like that. And one of the things that he really likes to quote is, it's not about bloggers, but it pertains to bloggers as well. He said that somebody who decides to write for a career has signed up to do homework for the rest of their life. And I'm like, that is absolutely how, yeah. So yeah, she was doing homework every single day, every single night for 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, which reminds me, I don't remember when I planned on talking about this, but whatever, we're switching subjects. Or did you need to do F? Does that need to get stuck in? Or go on a tangent?
F. Well, I can do F really quick if you want. In Office 365, if you install the apps, Word, Excel, whatever, through your Office 365 thing, and you've got that version, you've got the potential for autosave, which keeps the app autosaving into Office 365 all the time, so you'll never lose anything. Great feature. Everybody loves it. But there is no, so then it gets really fuzzy on where your major and minor versions show up, and there's no way inside of the app to say save, like with a capital S, and make a major version. So the only way that I've been able to find out how to do it is to close the app and then open the app. It does that. And so somebody that I know set up a user voice on office365.uservoice.com on voting to add that to the application. So it's the ability. The autosave is great. I don't want to take that away. Because we talked about that a couple weeks ago about how, and I don't know if it was the one you were on, but how the autosave has resulted in people losing data, because if they want to create a new instance of a document, they open the old instance up and then make some changes and do some stuff and then save it with a new name. But in the time between they opened it up and when they saved it, it's been saving over top of the old stuff. So that, I just want to put that out there. So if that's something that you're interested in, go out to office365uservoice.com or click the link in the show notes and upvote that feature.
That is a stellar feature. 'Cause I'm with you. It is sometimes, like when I write those articles I was just talking about, that's my word process, right? I open the old ones, and then I quickly need to, save as to get them into a new namespace, and I could see losing it. So I get it.
Yep.
And so speaking of daily stuff, the other, completely off topic, because the show is going to be like 2 hours long, so who cares?
Supersized.
But there is a great podcast. If you listen to this podcast, you probably listen to better podcasts.
Yeah.
But the Planet Money team does one called The Indicator.
Love it.
And so, every day it's like 7 to 10 minutes of, news that is very recent and, kind of its effect on the economy, or just kind of that, Planet Money economist view on this announcement or that announcement. And so, I'm a big fan of that because, most of my car trips are 7 to 10 minutes. I can usually sneak one in. So that's a really great podcast if you're into, actually how the world works and money and, the economy and things like that.
Yeah, I love The Indicator. My only complaint about The Indicator is that it doesn't come out in the morning. So if I have listened to the previous day's Indicator, then when I get up in the morning to drive wherever, there's not a new Indicator for me. But yeah, love The Indicator.
Yeah. And they're an interesting group, right? Because I love the format. I love the news. But they have a different slant on some of the topics than I do.
Yeah.
And so, but right, this is back to, we're over 40 now, and we're a little more mature, right? I can actually listen to it and be like, all right, I disagree with how you're interpreting this, but I still, like you, I still like the show, right? It's a good reminder to people that, especially because, the economic stuff, and politics kind of go hand in hand. So,
oh gosh, yeah.
You might turn this on and be like, whoa, they don't like Trump. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, they those two, they don't say it, but they hate Trump.
Oh, they probably have said it, but yeah, it's they try to be more subtle.
Yeah, right. But so when you're listening to it, if you were a pro-Trump guy or a girl, I could see where this would really upset you. But it's good to listen to them and get the story from the other side if they're against what you are, or if they're on the same side as you, then be excited that they're just going to add fuel to your fire. But it is a great show.
Yep, and it's funny, a long time ago, Leo Laporte was talking about his tech podcast, and he was saying that for the different tech podcasts that he does, there is a very definite upper limit to how many subscribers he can get. And I can't remember what the numbers he was saying, but he's like, Windows Weekly is going to get 200,000 views no matter what, and there's nothing I can do to make that higher. There's just nothing I can do. So the only way that he can scale his business is to create more podcasts. Mm-hmm. And I've been watching NPR do that similar thing because Planet Money was a spinoff of one of the podcasts, and now The Indicator is a spinoff of Planet Money because you can tell they've been watching the metrics, and Planet Money has gotten the biggest audience that it can get. And so now they've got this other one, and so, yeah, but I love it. I like more stuff, so it's all good.
Yeah, they are good. And yeah, have you listened to Freakonomics recently? They've went and did a partnership with Stitcher now, so that's a little weird, or not weird, but it was weird at first. They kind of toned it down.
Yeah, and so that one, if you don't listen to Freakonomics, for goodness sakes, go start listening to Freakonomics. But I didn't realize how long he'd been doing it, and I mean, so in that episode where he talked about the change to Stitcher, he kind of went through and waxed nostalgically for a while, and I enjoyed that. That was good.
I did too.
Love Freakonomics. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Armstrong Freakonomics was really good.
Yeah, what an interesting story, right? The whole is he full of poop or not is a different question, but at least the persona he put on for that show, you kind of empathize that word with that guy.
Yeah, there was a lot of these the factual stuff, and boy, are we off on a tangent now. But when he was talking about exactly how he was doping, and exactly when he had to dope, and exactly what the doping did, and exactly how he could get, I mean, just the nuts and bolts, nitty gritty part of it was really fascinating.
Yeah, it's a math problem, right? And I'm like, how much more simple can you make that? It's just math.
That's what he was saying. It's just simple math. We know exactly the half-life of the thing. We know when we need it. We know when they're going to test. It's just a half-life thing. Yeah, it was very interesting. I don't know that I came out of it very sympathetic to him, but just the facts around it and the dynamics of it were just endlessly fascinating.
Yeah, well, I guess part of the other problem, though, is I agree with him that everyone that was, competing with him, they were all cheating, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I completely agree when he said I could have never won the Tour de France if I had not cheated because everyone else was cheating.
Yep.
And so you're like, but, you became the poster child scapegoat for this. And cycling hasn't fixed the problem, I think, is the other. I don't know. It was interesting.
Yeah, so I agree with that. My issues with him have been, and they touched on it a little bit in the podcast, how he dealt with the people who were accusing him of it before he got caught.
Yeah.
And that was my big beef with him, and I've never completely forgiven him for that. Not that I care much about cycling, but I did. So the stuff that he said about the Oprah interview on how that happened and why that happened, that was really interesting. And just the behind it. We should do a podcast about podcasts.
We keep talking about it. I think that we would have a lot of fun. The only problem with that is that neither one of us has a real commute. So, we listen to a whole bunch. Right now I've got like 14 shows in my head that I could talk intelligently about. Mm-hmm. But then, next week, shut up. Next week, I probably won't listen to another one between now and the next show we do. So I'd be like, oh, I haven't listened to any. So the ebbing and flow, I don't have a set podcast schedule. It's the only thing that scares me about us doing that actual show.
Yep. Speaking of the show, we should wrap it up. Lori has got to leave here. We have burnt through her time. So we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. We should figure out what we're going to do for 400. I'm going to be around this afternoon. You going to be around this afternoon?
I am. I've got like 275 emails to do, but,
I might ping you. We'll see. But for those in the chat room, thanks very much. Hopefully over the next 6 weeks, as our schedules are crazy, we'll continue to be as consistent as we can. Sorry about not having one last week. As always, you can hit me up on Twitter at Todd Clint. Email me todd@toddclint.com. Any suggestions about this kind of stuff, the things we've talked about, any of that. If you want to sponsor, rock on, whatever, get a hold of us.
There you go. And I'm at Shane's Cows on Twitter, or hit me up on YouTube. And I'd love to talk to you. So have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.